Hey guys, wow, you probably won't survive this. The sky is that southern kind of blue where the sun pierces everything. You squint, not because it's bright, but because the cloud of white smoke rising near the playground feels like a betrayal. Screams ripple through the park, mothers grabbing children, strollers crashing, a baby crying so hard she chokes on it. You're standing at the edge of an ICE raid protest in Atlanta, Juneteenth weekend, where the police are supposed to observe. Instead, what you see is a tactical line of ICE officers lobbing stun grenades just meters from a daycare fence. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let's go on the journey of today's story together. The crowd wasn't even marching yet. It was a press-only zone, set up so families and activists could share testimonies about unjust detentions. There were folding chairs. Someone had made vegan tamales. A local reverend was midway through a prayer when the flashbang hit the concrete. You duck as the blast echoes off the school building. 5 more go off. What did they think this was a riot? A woman next to you drops to her knees. She's lost sight of her son. "Mateo," she screams, her voice cracking. You remember reading about similar tactics in Portland back in 2020, but this is Georgia, and this is ICE. Hours later, local ICE spokespeople say the protest was non-permitted and posed a threat to federal safety zones. They reference a little-known clause in their tactical response guide, published at ice.gov. They claim the grenades were non-lethal deterrents. But you saw a child being resuscitated on the sidewalk. Wired.com's security column mentions that ICE began purchasing surplus military crowd control gear in early 2024. A note buried in an April procurement memo references expanded regional defense kits for perimeter irregularities. Perimeter irregularities. That's what they call crying mothers. You don't notice how tightly you're gripping your own forearm until the shouting dies down and the smoke starts to settle. You try to remember, how did it come to this? It wasn't always stun grenades and armored ICE vans flanking kindergarten fences. You walk past a wall where someone has painted, "No human being is illegal." The irony bleeds through the red brick. The context begins a year before, when ICE's mandate quietly expanded under the Department of Homeland Security's revised Community Shield initiative. It sounded harmless, protective even. But tucked inside the fine print of that policy was a reclassification of public disturbance zones, giving ICE broader power to act preemptively at anticipated protest convergence points. That's bureaucrat speak for, if they think you might protest, they can mobilize. Then came the rhetoric. You hear it on AM radio stations in the South and see it in Twitter replies to any immigration thread. Illegals are criminals. Send them back. We have laws for a reason. The more ICE raids dominated headlines fueled by viral YouTube clips of early morning knockdowns, the more public support for extreme enforcement climbed. You remember a Marshall Project report that dropped in May, just 6 weeks before the Atlanta protest. It highlighted a dramatic rise in collateral apprehensions where bystanders without warrants are detained anyway, simply for being near the scene. That's the atmosphere people walked into that Saturday morning. They didn't expect ICE, but ICE expected them. The protest itself was meant to be peaceful. Organized by a coalition of immigration attorneys, clergy, and local parents, it was a teach-in more than a march. What changed was the location. Someone had shared the address on a public Instagram story. Within 90 minutes, an armored SUV was parked by the elementary school's rear lot. On the ice.gov media page, there's a surreal post from the same day. ICE celebrates citizenship ceremony at Fort Benning. An agent is pictured shaking hands with a smiling immigrant-turned-citizen. No mention of flashbangs. No acknowledgement of what else they did that day. Just 85 miles east.
Gas is coming.
You spot her through the blur of noise and dust, huddled behind an overturned cooler of bottled water. Her name is Marisol, 24. Her baby Lucia is strapped to her chest, coughing through a blanket soaked with someone's spilled iced tea. You don't forget the way she crouches low, not moving, just humming quietly, her hands over the infant's ears as if that might stop the world from collapsing around them. Marisol came to Atlanta from Honduras 5 years ago. She's undocumented, but her daughter was born here. She'd never been to a protest before, too risky, too exposed, but this one was about kids, about families being separated at traffic stops, about stories like hers. She believed it might be safe. She believed wrong. You learn later that Marisol had arrived early that morning, wearing a simple pink shirt and carrying Lucia in a front pouch carrier. She'd signed up to pass out water bottles. When the flashbang started, she instinctively ran not away from the scene, but toward a toddler who had tripped over a folding chair. She picked him up and shielded both children behind the cooler. A photographer from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution captures the image. It goes viral within hours. Marisol, low to the ground, holding both children as white smoke blurs the background. The caption reads, "Shelter and flesh." ICE doesn't respond publicly, but that night, they quietly list her apartment on a detainment priority watch list despite her lack of criminal history. ProPublica runs her story the next day. In the comments, disbelief, support, hate. One reply says she used her baby as a shield. That's why we need ICE. You try to understand that kind of thinking, how someone could watch that image and feel nothing but suspicion. Maybe they see war where you see survival. An ICE incident report published on ice.gov refers to Marisol only as subject number 4. It lists her action as evasive movement toward federal perimeter. Nowhere does it mention the child. Nowhere does it say that Lucia's ear still bleeds from the sonic blast rupture. And yet Marisol is still not afraid. When asked if she'd do it again, she says, siempre, for her, always. You sit on the train days later, scrolling through your phone, trying to make sense of what's real and what's manufactured noise. But the numbers don't lie. According to track immigration at Syracuse University, ICE carried out 122 protest-adjacent enforcement actions in the first half of 2025, up 41% from the previous year. That term again, adjacent, not targeting organizers, just being there. And in Atlanta, the data tells a chilling story. Local immigration attorneys report at least 39 undocumented individuals detained during the protest aftermath, with ICE vans circling homes and community centers for 48 hours post-event. Many were not at the rally. Their names had appeared on police bodycam footage scanned with AI software. ICE quietly began piloting in spring 2025, leaked by The Intercept just last month. You watch the footage yourself. A low-resolution clip of the rally shot from a chest-mounted GoPro. A crowd, signs, children on shoulders. The AI pauses the video, drawing red squares around certain faces. One of them is Marisol. Another is a teenage girl holding a poster that reads, "We are human too." The software identifies them with 89% certainty and flags them for follow-up. Meanwhile, ICE's official public reports stay quiet. Their homepage boasts record-breaking fentanyl seizures and a July 4th citizenship success story in Nebraska. But the arrests in Atlanta? Not listed. You have to dig into secondary logs released through FOIA requests to find the names. Some are just initials, AC, MR, SV, accompanied by vague citations, interference, loitering near restricted zone, failure to comply with verbal instruction. And yet, the incident was anything but vague. News outlets like CNN and The Guardian ran evening specials on the stun grenades and crying toddlers. One independent streamer counted 7 separate grenade launches in under 30 minutes. And local hospitals confirmed 13 children under age 6 were treated for smoke inhalation. One toddler, 2-year-old Amani, was temporarily put on oxygen and now startles violently at loud noises. You realize that the real data is not just numbers, it's that sound. That click whistle pop of the grenade as it hit pavement 2 feet from a stroller. That memory doesn't show up in ICE's year-end report, but you still hear it. You sit across from a law professor at Emory University who's been tracking ICE tactics for the last decade. She sighs before she speaks, tapping a printed still frame from bodycam footage where an officer throws a flash grenade into a stroller pile. The legal line, she says, isn't always moral. But here, I'm not even sure the line exists anymore. You try to give ICE the benefit of the doubt. You find their operational manual, revised in early 2024, and archived at ice.gov, and start combing through their rules on crowd dispersal. It allows non-lethal intervention in cases of public interference with federal duty. No warrant necessary. No accountability clause for injury. Everything rests on how the field supervisor phrases the report. One keyword, non-compliant assembly, and it's all greenlit. But then you read the counter-argument. A National ICE Union spokesperson tells the New York Post, agents are under siege. They're being doxxed, stalked. When protesters block a federal facility, that's not peaceful, that's a threat. You scroll through the comments under the article. Let ICE do its job. They asked for it. Use real ammo next time. It's not just the extremists either. Some moderates argue that the protesters, while well-meaning, should have picked a better location, as though the location, the elementary school with the wide grassy lawn, justified violence. That's where the philosophical rubber meets the road. Is the right to protest void if it makes people uncomfortable? And who decides what discomfort means? You watch a segment on WLWT, a Cincinnati-based affiliate, where a retired ICE agent defends the agency's actions. Do you want fentanyl traffickers hiding behind baby strollers? He asks. It's a straw man, but effective. Fear always is. You notice he never mentions that the Atlanta rally was vetted by local clergy, attended by dozens of documented U.S. citizens, and was registered with the city, though no permit was granted. You pause the video. You look back at Marisol. You think of Amani, the toddler on oxygen. You ask yourself, is the government protecting us or protecting itself from us? That question stays. You return to the neighborhood 2 weeks later. The chalk drawings on the sidewalk are still there, faded but visible. Stick figures with signs, smiley suns, a heart with mama written in blocky pink letters. You realize the world doesn't move on as fast as the headlines, especially not here. Imani's mother, Angela, tells you her daughter now wakes up screaming. She thinks the walls are falling, she says. Angela hasn't returned to her cleaning job since the protest. She's afraid ICE has flagged her building. She's not undocumented, but her sister is, and she doesn't want to risk ICE knocking on the wrong door. Across the street, 2 teenagers who filmed the protest have been missing for 6 days. Their parents say they were going to edit a short documentary for TikTok. Now no one knows where they are. Lawyers have asked ICE directly. No response. A community center staffer confides that she overheard agents at a Waffle House talking about gray zone pickups, a term she hadn't heard before, but which now keeps her up at night. You check track again, no new listings. But one entry, case nub 0743D, lists a 16-year-old taken into custody the morning after the protest. Reason, witness to sensitive event. You blink, then reread. Witness, not instigator, not suspect, just someone who saw too much. At a Sunday vigil, a pastor reads out the names of 13 children hospitalized that day. He pauses for a long time on Lucia's. She's still too young to know what happened, but she clings tighter to Marisol now, cries when she hears helicopters. Then there's the school. It's still closed. The district claims air quality concerns, but you overhear one teacher mutter that no one wants to be next. A quiet chill has settled in. Parents stop walking their kids past the playground. Activists delete live streams. Even local journalists tread carefully. And yet, despite the silence, the trauma simmers. It's in the drawings. It's in the locked classroom doors. It's in the way a siren changes the shape of a mother's shoulders. ICE doesn't log that kind of impact, but it's there, lingering, haunting. You drive home in silence, no radio, just the hum of the road and the weight of what you now know. It sits heavy like the memory of a bad dream you can't quite shake. But it's not a dream, it's a system, a pattern, a weapon polished to look like policy. You start noticing how normalized it all feels. The vans, the jargon, the way processing becomes a verb for human lives. You remember the ICE bulletin posted days after the protest. It included a line about protecting constitutional order. You wonder what that means when a baby gasps for breath in a sanctuary city. The philosopher in you wants to pull the camera back, way back. You see a nation built on ideals but structured on contradictions. Freedom and enforcement, liberty and walls. You're told the law is neutral. But it never feels that way when the flashbang lands at the feet of a woman whose only crime was presence. In a piece by the Migration Policy Institute, you find a line that won't leave you. Increased enforcement rarely leads to deterrence, only displacement. They're right. Families move further underground. Children stop trusting school counselors. Undocumented parents avoid hospitals, even in emergencies. When ICE shows up with stun grenades, it doesn't stop migration, it stops safety. You think back to that pastor reading names, to Lucia, to Amani, to the teenage girl whose red hoodie the AI flagged. None of them were threats. None of them held weapons. They held water bottles, snack bags, handmade signs. But in the logic of enforcement, that was enough. You start asking yourself harder questions, not about ICE, but about you, about silence, about what happens when you scroll past too fast. You remember how easy it is to accept cruelty when it's bureaucratized, dressed up in uniforms and acronyms. DHS, CBP, ICE. Behind those letters are trembling hands, burned cheeks, ruptured ears. You grip the wheel. You stare at the highway sign glowing green above you. Next exit, Homeland Boulevard. It's not lost on you. What does Homeland mean when your presence can make you a suspect? When the government is more afraid of witnesses than of weapons? You wake up the next morning, but the weight hasn't lifted. You brew coffee, scroll headlines. None of them mention Atlanta anymore. The story has moved on to border policy disputes in Congress, to a celebrity's controversial take on asylum. But not this. Not mothers screaming into smoke, not babies on oxygen. That's why you have to tell it. You open your phone and post the image of Marisol shielding Lucia again, captionless this time. You watch the likes trickle in. Then a comment from a friend. What can we even do? It's the question that comes up over and over, defeated, heavy. You understand it, but you also know that silence is exactly what the system counts on. You revisit an old report from the ACLU. The first step in dismantling injustice is visibility. You nod, not action, not outrage, visibility. Because before a nation changes, it has to see itself. You decide not to let this story fade. So you write to your city council. You share the footage in your group chat. You show the body cam clip to your uncle who always says, they only arrest bad people. You challenge him. He stammers. It's uncomfortable, but real. You also notice others doing the same. A high school student starts a petition to block ICE from school zones. A nurse who treated Imani posts a TikTok about the smell of scorched polyester and what it did to the children's lungs. It gets 2.3 million views in 2 days. This isn't slacktivism, it's resistance at scale. Then there's the church downtown. They install murals across their front wall. No slogans, just faces. Marisol, Lucia, the teenage boy who filmed the protest, Angela. Above them, one word, presentes. It means they are here, and they are. You're here too, and you've heard the story now. So what comes next is up to you. Share it, say their names, challenge what's normal. Because if we stop telling the stories, the silence will finish what the stun grenade started. And now it's time to let it settle. Let the smoke drift slowly out of your lungs. Let the images fade, not to forget them, but to hold them more gently. The screech of sirens quiets. The gravel under your feet smooths out. And you are left not in chaos, but in stillness. You think about how fragile it all is: freedom, justice, presence. You picture Lucia sleeping in her mother's arms, her ear bandaged, a soft lullaby humming through her breathing. You think of Imani, learning to laugh again at the sound of cartoons instead of flinching at loud noises. These aren't just victims, they're reminders of how quickly safety can turn to danger and how powerful witnessing can be. You are not powerless. Your voice, your post, your curiosity, these are tools, real ones. You've seen what happens when people watch and say nothing. You've also seen what happens when just one person presses record. Change doesn't begin in courtrooms, it begins with us. So take a breath. Let it out slow. Know that tonight, someone else is wondering if they're alone. And because of you, because you stayed, because you listened, they're not.